Welcome, everybody, to the Flagship Podcast. I am Chip Brown of Horns247.com. Joined, as always, by my esteemed colleague and proud Tampa Catholic graduate, the one and only Eric Henry. Eric, what's going on, my man?
Oh, man. Good morning, Chip. Good morning, everyone watching on YouTube, the Horns247 Twitter page. Apologies to those who typically watch on Facebook, having a little bit of a connectivity issue. So hopefully I'll get that straightened out with the fine folks who handle some things on the back end as far as getting that Facebook platform reconnected there. But coming off a Texas victory, a much needed victory, Chip, for the men's basketball team over the Missouri Tigers last night, left Moody Center around 12:30. But hey, when you love what you do, you don't work a day in your life, right? So we're back at it bright and early. 4 downs just published. Chip Shots just published this morning. Check them out. Check both of those out on horns247.com. And we're coming back at you with another episode of the Flagship Podcast.
That's right. That's right. We got a lot to get into, a lot of football. We'll touch some more on basketball, women's basketball. Looking good. Big game against Tennessee coming up on Thursday. That's a home game, kids. So if you want to watch a top 10 basketball team that wears burnt orange, Moody Center, Thursday night, Tennessee, and the number 1 softball team in the land. What? Where's 4-time defending national champion Oklahoma? We'll tell you. But Eric, let's get into, we've got a little bit of news. Obviously, over the weekend, Steve Sarkisian gets a little contract bump, gets a year added to his contract. He's now through the 2031 season, a little pay bump, probably $100,000 a year pay bump, which will take him over $11 million by the time the contract ends in 2031. I think he'll be at 10.5 for the 2025 season. Eric, there was talk of NFL interest. I don't think Sark was ever thinking seriously about going to the NFL, but hey, you go 13-3 and you lead your team to a second straight college football playoff Final Four. There's got to be a little sugar on top, right?
Chip, I laughed.
Especially when your agent's Jimmy Sexton.
But look, hey, Chip, you're stealing my thunder here. You're stealing my thunder. All right. I smiled. I smiled when you talked about Steve Sarkisian NFL interest because, listen, Chip, I have not had the illustrious, decorated career that you've had in this field. However, I have done this for almost a decade. And there's one thing I know, Chip, that is a constant in life. Death, unfortunately. Taxes, unfortunately. And come January, it is Jimmy Sexton season. Jimmy Sexton is going to get his clients paid. The ones who have put themselves in positions to get paid, Jimmy Sexton is going to get them paid. Yeah, man, I don't think there was any real interest because let's call a spade, right? If Steve Sarkisian wanted an NFL job, he would have put himself, kind of definitively, Chip, after this 2-year stretch, 25 wins, in the conversation, right? And I think you and I know this. I think the audience knows this, but maybe it's worth spelling out. When someone's interested in a job, whether it's a collegiate job or in this case, a college coach head to the NFL, it's not you float a little something out to Adam Schefter and all of a sudden it gets reported, right? When you're really interested, you make that full court press, right? And whether it is the agent, in this case, Jimmy Sexton, or the client, in this case, Steve Sarkisian, you are putting yourself squarely in the conversation. We're not just talking about, oh, here's a little name there tied to one job. We're talking about this person is interested in the role or in a job or in making a promotion. So that to me is spelled, yeah. If Steve Sarkisian wanted to be an NFL coach, could be an NFL coach, plain and simple, right? If you would have just heard some one little smoke screen of a report about, oh, that would be a nice little fit, him in Dallas, right? And first off, no, it wouldn't. No, it wouldn't, right? I just wrote again up on horns247.com, 4 downs, Chris Del Conte as the anti-Jerry Jones. Because, and I won't go too long on a tangent. I'll send it back to you on this, Chip. Something that kind of hit me, and I wrote this in the article. Chip, when we were down on the field pregame, there was a trivia question that flashed, right? Who was the co-captain of the 1964 Arkansas team that won the Cotton Bowl, right? And I thought it was funny because all the other trivia questions were related to Texas or Ohio State, except this one, because Jerry Jones just found a way to shoehorn himself into the festivities, right? Because Jerry Jones thinks of himself deep down as a football guy. That's why that organization has had the issues they've had, and you're much better equipped to speak to that than I. He thinks of himself as a football guy. He doesn't think of himself as a rich guy who owns a team. Thinks of himself as a football guy. Chris Del Conte, a former track and field athlete at Washington State, could easily think of himself as, I'm a former collegiate athlete. I need to, put myself in position and kind of melon affairs. He doesn't do that, right? He deserves credit for hiring people and allowing them to make decisions. So anyhow, that's my long-winded way of saying that would not have worked, and I believe Steve Sarkisian is well deserved of the raise he received, and that there wasn't any real interest in making the jump to the NFL.
Yeah, how about the boos that Jerry Jones got when his face popped up on the big screen in his own stadium at the Cotton Bowl? They quickly got him off the screen.
Quickly.
Because it was, hey, there's Jerry. Boo! He's like, so, yeah. It's so hard to find a good NFL job. I'm not kidding. We talk about alignment all the time. You just touched on it, Chris Del Conte. And even though Jay Hartzell, the president, has moved on to SMU, private school money, they're doubling up that salary for Jay Hartzell.
And you don't have to deal with the Capitol either.
Don't have to deal with the legislature anymore. You won't have to go to hearings and explain why Texas is going to the SEC and take it on the chin from a TCU committee chairwoman. So even though Jay Hartzell moving on in June or whatever, the alignment's still there. Chris Del Conte, Kevin Eltife, head of the Regents board, and so Steve Sarkisian still in a good spot. And if you've driven on campus, you've seen the construction tents or fences around the School of Social Work, which is almost gone now. I mean, it's literally been torn down. I know there are a lot of people who were, students who went through that School of Social Work building. They're going to be better off. It's going to take a minute, but eventually they're going to be in where the School of Business, the Macomb School of Business is. The Macomb School of Business is moving over to Guadalupe, over to that Dobie area. That's going to be nice. Everyone's going to be better off eventually. I know everyone's like, athletics is just mowing down this camp. Okay, all right. That building was full of asbestos, by the way. That's why it took so long before they could tear it down. They had to go in there and radioactively treat this place. Hopefully everyone's okay who studied there for years and years. But anyway, so things are moving in the right direction for Texas football. Winter workouts will begin on Monday. And Eric, obviously, we should also mention that Pete Kwiatkowski is going to, he got a little 1-year extension. He'll make $1.9 million this year in 25, $2 million in 26. Kyle Flood, the offensive coordinator, O-line coach, will make $1.4 million in 25. I know the coaches love it when we throw their business out like this. Flood will make $1.475 million in 26, and then Jeff Banks, special teams coordinator and tight ends coach, will make $1.2 million in 25 and $1.25 million in 2026. I'm sure we'll have more coaching salary updates as those become available when they answer our open records requests, which is always a fun little exercise with the University of Texas. Oh, those documents aren't ready yet. You'll have to refile this. Can you just save it until they're ready and then send them out? But anyway, enough about our little behind the scenes attempts to get you all information. Texas football. Eric, we've got a bunch of guys on campus already. The early enrollees are here, which is great news for Texas football. It seems like, does anyone go to prom anymore, Eric? Good heavens. The majority of the Texas 2025 recruiting class is already on campus, including KJ Lacey, the quarterback who initially it sounded like maybe he wouldn't be an early enrollee. Well, he's here. So the quarterback room, I know there's been questions about that. You got Arch Manning, you got Trey Owens, and you got KJ Lacey. Now, Sarkisian likes a quarterback room of 4 scholarship guys. Not sure what Cole Lord's up to these days. Probably should have checked that out. By the way, this flip card from the Cotton Bowl.
Oh boy, do I feel another Chip Brown rant on flip cards?
Oh my God, this was one of the worst flip cards of all time. But let me see. Actually, the Peach Bowl was worse.
I was just about to say, for the folks that were counting at home, I think the flip card at the Peach Bowl was worse in Chip Brown's mind.
It was worse. Cole Lord is he's gone. Okay, so I think they're fine, Eric. Someone asked me in a chat on Monday, do they need to go find a grad transfer? No. Just play Arch and Trey, get KJ Lacey up to speed. What are your thoughts?
Oh, I actually disagree with you there. I guess, maybe, Chip, I've covered too much G5 football where I've seen, multiple quarterbacks. I remember covering here. I saw 4 quarterbacks play in one game, and that's because 2 got banged up, right? Listen, I'll say this. If Texas does not get another scholarship arm, they will be fine. But 2 things can be true. I don't think it's going to be the end of the world if they don't go out and get another arm. With that being said, Chip, there's so many in this transfer portal era. There's so many guys on the street. We're not talking about a starter, or excuse me, we're not talking about someone to come in and push Arch Manning as the starter. We're talking about just a scholarship arm who's tossed a couple passes here or there. I think they should go out and at least find someone who, again, we're not talking about, insert walk-on, right? In this transfer market, you're going to have guys who are going to be left out in the cold, who don't find a home. And at least if you have someone who you feel like worst case scenario, break, glass case emergency scenario has to take snaps, I would prefer that over not having that. I was kind of torn. I was kind of torn to whether I was going to say between playing the freshman, but even if you got to play a freshman, that's fine. I just don't want to get in a situation where you have multiple quarterbacks. I mean, look at Chip. Quinn Ewers has failed to stay healthy the past few years, right? And that's just one example. So, yeah, I do think they probably need to get an arm.
Well, CB, the greatest volunteer producer in the history of radio, has compiled a breakdown there that tells you Texas has needed multiple quarterbacks in all those years, spanning 1998 to 2024. Looks like a majority. So, and I'm fine with it. I guess you're basically bringing a third stringer onto campus,
right?
So you got to find a guy. Probably happen after spring. We will see how that goes. The guys who have declared for the draft are in the draft. The underclassmen we mentioned earlier, Isaiah Bond, Matthew Golden, Jadon Blue, Kelvin Banks, Cameron Williams. I think that covers it. Trey Moore will be back. The Big Ocho will be back. He got off to a little bit of a slow start, but man, what a finish. If he can pick up where he left off in 2025 with all those plays he made behind the line at the end of the year, including the strip sack that ended Carson Beck's, not only ended his season, Eric, it ended his tenure at Georgia. I got one look at Gunnar Stockton. Kirby Smart started talking about how team plays harder. For Gunnar Stockton, Carson Beck's like, let me head off to Miami to my Cavender.
It's a great line, Chip. That's an excellent line, because I was going to say, I think, that first off, I mean, listen, Kirby Smart's around that team every day, so I guess he's equipped to make that statement. That would just be interesting. That's what I'll leave it at that. But no, I thought that Carson Beck had plenty of reasons off the field to decide to want to go to Miami. Although I will say this, Chip, just in as a native Floridian, someone who spent time in South Florida. Chip, can I tell you the difference between South Florida and Texas? People who have money can show that they have money in Texas. Not exactly the case in South Florida. So I'm not accusing the Hurricanes of anything. I'm just saying, yes, Cam Ward's check clear for 1 year. I hope Carson Beck's check clears, because it's a little bit of a different financial situation there comparing, South Florida money, right? There's Chip. This isn't always a video platform. For those of you listening on audio, Chip is holding up his phone showing the Cavender's Instagram. That's certainly plenty of reason to go to Miami for sure there. All right, here's the thing when you talk about the guys who left for Texas, as hopefully our bosses are not screaming at us for how we're conducting ourselves delirious this early in the morning.
I mean, listen, we're just putting out the information.
Just information tells. That's all we are. No real surprises to me in my mind. I think the biggest surprise, at least judging from our boards, right? Some people were questioning, and I know we're going to talk about it and take it or leave it. Cam Williams deciding to make the leap for the NFL draft. I will save that as far as my thoughts there until take it or leave it. But outside of that, no real surprises. I thought Trey Moore coming back, probably the right decision. Put to you this way, right? If you took a look at his film coming out of UTSA, he probably would have been, what would you say, Chip, a day 3, maybe if he tested well, day 2 type of pick, given the production he had. And go ahead, Chip.
In the NFL, he's an outside linebacker. Like, he's not big enough to, defensive ends in a 4-man line, and then even in a 3-man line, you got to be even bigger.
Right.
So I find it kind of interesting, because I heard some of the stuff about trying to get a new NIL deal involved Trey Moore wanting to pass rush on every down. And it's like, dude, you probably want to drop into coverage some, because that's what you're going to be doing in the NFL. Like, you're not Reggie White. You might be Bruce Irvin, but you're not the elite pass rusher guys. I don't know. Maybe he is. Maybe he thinks he's Grenard or, one of those guys, but we shall see.
I'll give you a quick comp, and I don't think this is out of bounds. Shaq Barrett is a guy who made a lot of money just more or less being a pass rusher, right? I mean, so the argument could be made there, but just to quickly finish that thought. I think, Trey was a guy who was draft eligible because he redshirted his first year at UTSA. So he would have been draft eligible before coming to Texas. Like I said, would have been a day 3, maybe if you test well and someone really believes in him, a day 2 pick. I don't think he's done anything to really enhance that stock this year. So in my mind, it makes the most sense to come back, make whatever NIL money that is there, because I'm sure it'll be just as good as probably your first rookie deal at this place. Go out, show you can do it consistently on the SEC level, and then we're having a conversation similarly, to the Jahdae Barron, right, where you'd make the decision to come back and bet on yourself. And I'll give you a nice segue, Chip. I think that's probably the same thing that Michael Taft is thinking to himself, betting on himself, saying that, hey, I probably would have been, a day 3 pick is currently constituted, but I'm going to come back and bet on myself and see what I can do.
Yeah. And Michael Taft, that guy bleeds burnt orange. He wants to try to help win a national championship. I think that's why you heard him screaming in the tunnel after the game, some of that viral video, because he knew how close they were to accomplishing that mission. And, on that note, Eric, obviously Ohio State beats Notre Dame. We kind of said, we said whoever wins the Texas-Ohio State game is probably going to be the national champion. And so you look back on 1st and goal from the 1 with even more angst and but if you're trying to find silver linings, Texas is right there. I mean, they could have won the national championship this year, and that's both glorious and agonizing because you know how tough it is to get to that mountaintop. And so there's Ohio State, your new national champ, and Texas will open the season in Columbus on August 30th. And Eric, I did a chip shots this week on the players that Ohio State loses from this national championship team, and it's a lot. It is substantial. It's 8 starters on offense. It's 7 starters on defense, and it's all the biggest names, including Will Howard. And so everyone's like, well, who's going to play quarterback for Ohio State? And right now it appears to be Julian Sayin, a redshirt freshman who initially signed with Alabama, ultimately ended up at Ohio State. He's a top 10 national recruit, and so we'll see how that goes. But Arch Manning, Julian Sayin, I'll roll with Arch Manning in that situation.
Yeah, Chip, real quick, and again, we'll have plenty of time to get into the Ohio State matchup, right? But first off, yes, I would take Arch Manning in that matchup. Although, Sayin was a kid who, again, had signed with Alabama, like you mentioned, top 10 recruit, but the experience edge, right? Like, let's not forget about the value of those 2.5 games that Arch Manning played, right? So there's that. But what I was going to make there is what I love, and I hope we get more and more of this now in the 12-team playoff era. We're not in the BCS anymore. One loss doesn't knock you out, right? So it's as things kind of progress a slight bit more towards the college basketball model, right? Where you can play a tough team here or there, early in the year in non-conference to maybe kind of assess where your team is at. Love everything about that. So I think it's going to be a great match, especially for Texas, as they are, as we talked about, losing some of the veteran guys, reloading. And I do think it's a reload, not a rebuild, to kind of assess where they're at.
Yeah. And remember, next year, Texas at Ohio State, at Georgia, at Florida, at Mississippi State, at Kentucky. So there's your road schedule in the SEC, at Georgia, at Florida. Not going to be easy. But Eric, as far as football, any other top of mind topics you want to hit?
No, I think we're pretty clear on football. Again, we're in that weird kind of lull period, Chip, in which, all right, guys have declared for the draft. Guys are coming back. The next thing we're going to start hearing, as you noted pre-show, winter workouts, conditioning, things of that nature. So we're in that lull period where you just get just a little bit of a gap before it's time to get fired up about spring ball.
Yeah, and there will be more activity. Make no mistake about it. Heck, they offered a linebacker in the 2025 recruiting cycle. Yeah.
I guess real quick, should we talk Amari Niblack to A&M? I guess we didn't.
That's a development.
Right.
I have a quick thought on this. Amari Niblack came in, was surprised that Gunnar Helm was as good as he was surprised that he was not ahead of Juan Davis, and that he was the third tight end. Ended up catching 8-9 passes on the year. And he came from Alabama, where I believe he had more than 30 receptions the previous year or close to that. This is not a significant loss in my mind. Now, hold on a second. I've heard things about Spencer Shannon. I've heard good things about Jordan Washington. The thing I like about Spencer Shannon, he's going into his 3rd year in the program. And he was the backup to Gunnar Helm last year. Now, Jordan Washington was on the scout team, so he's getting yelled at by the defensive coaches for not running routes exactly like the opponent's tight end runs them. But either way, got coached up, got hit by the defense, all that. I think they're okay at tight end. And they have Emery Winston coming in, early enrollee, who Jeff Banks likes as an H-back. He's kind of a ready-to-go H-back at 247 pounds. I'm not panicking. And Jeff Banks told me at the Peach Bowl Media Day that there was no plan to go into the portal for a tight end. Now, we'll see. I doubt they'll do anything before the end of spring ball. They'll see what they've got, and then they'll decide, Eric.
Really quick, I agree with you on the aspect of the portal. I think they've recruited that position really well. Like you, I think Spencer Shannon is the next coming of Gunnar Helm. And I'm not necessarily talking about as a receiver immediately. I'm just saying who can fill that role as that inline blocker who can do some of the things that Helm did as he developed his game, right? So trust in the process, to quote the whole, was that the Philly 76ers line, trust the process. Trust in the development of Jeff Banks and the way this coaching staff can be able to develop guys, right? I think Gunnar Helm's a testament to that, right? So you have that. Jordan Washington is a guy who I think both of us are super high on, right? In terms of being an athletic, playmaker, big body, tight end, wide catch radius, all those things. So you have that there. Amari Winston is someone who I've just heard conflicting things. Now, granted, I'm not talking about from Texas. I'm talking about from other schools who are recruiting him. I know there were some people at most of my alma mater, UCF, who felt that he would have been a much better fit there as opposed to Texas playing at, the SEC level. I guess that's, some of that could just be smoke and mirrors and, all right, we really want to hang on to this kid. So let's kind of, I don't use the word denigrate, but let's just throw some things out there, right? Because UCF was heavily in the mix for Winston. But to your point, big body guy, good size, we'll see what happens there. And to your point about Amari Niblack, what I thought was interesting is, and Chip, you let me know if you think this is in bounds or not. I think based on the way that Steve Sarkisian talks about tight ends, the tight end position, he said it, that he feels outside of quarterbacks, one of the most important positions on his offense, right? There's so much from an offensive IQ perspective. And I'm not, trying to knock Amari Niblack's IQ, but different offenses, man. Coming from Tommy Rees's offense at Bama, what you have to do is just different, right? And especially at Bama, they asked him to just be a guy who more or less is outside, is athletic, and will get you some passes. So I think more than anything else, it just was a square peg, round hole, because Gunnar Helm, he earned respect. Juan Davis, how many times have we heard Sark talk about Juan Davis, even going back to the 2023 season, right? Guys who had been in the program for 4 years, that was going to be an uphill climb. So I think just, square peg, round hole.
Yeah, and the fact that he goes to A&M, he's going to play for Colin Klein. That's great. Steve Sarkisian, Amari was next man up. Like the three, Spencer Shannon, Jordan Washington, Amari Niblack, Jeff Banks told me at Peach Bowl Media Day, we're going to all get reps with the ones. They were all going to get a fair shot at being tight end 1 and tight end 2. And we know that Steve Sarkisian's offense requires a lot, as you said, football IQ wise, it's shifts, it's motions, it's precision, it's blocking, it's, lining up in the slot, lining up out wide, lining up attached. I guess the NIL money I know was the deciding factor is what I was told. So if that's important, and look, it might be important. So I don't want to begrudge that, but it just seems like he was poised and ready. They had entrusted him with special teams. They trusted him to take the next step, even though he had some, had a couple little time penalties. He had a couple, had a drop, but it's just interesting. And so Amari Niblack to A&M. He'll be back in Austin in November. He'll go face to face once again. All right, Eric. We mentioned winter workouts will begin Monday. January 27th. Full disclosure, we're recording on Wednesday, January 22nd. All right, Eric, let's touch on, I'll just get the softball thing out of the way. So the big polls that come out, USA softball, D1 softball, USA softball has Texas number 1. D1 softball has Florida number 1, Texas number 2. Both USA softball and D1 softball have 4-time defending national champion Oklahoma at number 3. And the reason is that Mike White now has the veteran team that Patty Gasso just had to say goodbye to after winning 4 straight national championships. And none of this means anything, but it is a sign, considering Texas has been to the Women's College World Series Championship Series twice in the last 3 years, that Texas is moving in the right direction. Pretty interesting that Mike White did not go into the portal for much of anything. Likes his high school recruiting. They brought in a big-time arm in Cambria Salmon, who was the number 4 overall recruit, right-handed pitcher. It is interesting, Mike White, with the departure of Estelle Czech, the veteran who was one of the heroes of that 2022 run to the Women's College World Series Championship Series. With her departure, Texas has no left-handed pitching on the roster, which is very interesting. There are some coaches who are like, got to have that lefty. Mike White, a former pitcher himself, is good with what he's got. So Texas, by the way, will open SEC play in March against Florida. So boom, right off the top, we will get a possible 1 versus 2 matchup. Texas will also play Oklahoma. Texas A&M, who almost knocked Texas out of the playoffs last year, went to that crazy super regional final after the 9-8 comeback win by Texas in the second game, just to get to that third game. Texas will not play Texas A&M in the regular season. So interesting. But yeah, Texas softball, number 1 in the country. Also, men's tennis, number 1 in the country right now. Real quick, great story. Timo Legout from France. His dad, 3-time Olympic ping pong member of the French Olympic team. Eric, how about that action? Christophe Legout. Don't mess with him in table tennis.
No doubt. But I'll just quickly say on Texas softball, listen, anytime you bring back Tegan Cavan, Reese Atwood, Mac Morgan, I think you're going to be in good shape. Right. So I'll just add that there. Again, Tegan Cavan, of course, went to Caitlin Clark's high school, right? West Des Moines, Iowa. It was a Dowling Catholic, if memory serves me correct.
Look at you, Mr. Caitlin Clark, high school knowledge man.
Well, I wrote the story last year, so it's still in the memory bank. So
there you go. Yeah, that'll be a fun team to watch. Just like the Texas women's basketball team. We'll get them out of the way, too, before we move on to Rodney Terry's epic win last night. Texas women, we talked about Maddie Booker going 3 of 19 in the loss to South Carolina. That was not a problem for Maddie Booker in a Coretta Scott King Classic showdown on Monday. Number 7 Texas against number 8 Maryland. Maddie Booker opened 6 of 7 shooting and never stopped. Finished with 28 points. She scored from everywhere on the court. Shea Holly got her 3-ball back. And really impressive play from Kyla Oldacre and Taylor Jones. No one has stopped those two all year. They are just a lot to handle down low. So the Texas women, as our man CB pointed out, there is a new time. It will be 7 o'clock on Thursday at Moody Center Texas versus Tennessee, another ranked matchup. So get on out to Moody. Eric, the Texas men's basketball team, you were right there, the Moody Center last night for one of the most eye-burning displays of basketball. If you're a fan of offense, you didn't get much. Both teams shot around 34%. Your thoughts? But Texas beat Missouri. Sorry.
Yeah, let's not bury the lead here, Chip. The Longhorns came in 1-4 in SEC play. They got the much needed win that they needed, as no other way to put it, in SEC play against number 22 ranked Mizzou. You talked about the poor shooting. Listen, both teams started, I think it was 1 of 17, Chip, from the field. At one point, 4 of 21 from the field 9 minutes into the game. And what was weird about it, Chip, is both of these teams have been good shooting teams, really good shooting teams, both ranked amongst the top 40 teams in the nation in three-point shooting. Missouri, since the start of conference play, second in the SEC, entering the game in three-point shooting. Both teams, Mizzou shot 15 of 48, 31% from the field, 18% from three, 4 of 22. Texas, 34%, 17 of 50, 4 of 20 from three. The thing that made the difference in this game, Chip, was second chance points. Texas, a rare. And listen, Missouri has not been a great rebounding team, although they kind of improved a little bit in SEC play. But Missouri, I think their leading rebounder, if memory serves correct, Mark Mitchell, averaging like 4.9 boards per game. Texas out-rebounded Missouri 39-31, 14-8 edge on the offensive boards, Chip. That led to 20 second chance points compared to 4 for the Tigers. That made the difference, quite frankly, in the game. That and some crucial, kind of shooting down the stretch where Missouri went cold. Texas held Missouri without a field goal for the final 5 minutes of the game. But yeah, Chip, a much needed win. Arthur Kaluma, a double-double, 14 points, 12 boards. And listen, we'll get into this a little bit, but Art Kaluma is the heart and soul of this team. Is he the best player? No, it's clear that, Trey's the best talent. But Arthur Kaluma, Chip, he's a guy I saw last year at K-State. He was a guy, a solid player, but I wouldn't say anything outstanding. He's taken himself to another level as far as being, 6'6", 215, 220, being asked to be the rebounder, tenacious on the boards, Chip. I try not to, bang on Caden Shedrick too much, because I think Caden's limitations are quite frankly more health related than anything else. But you wish Art Kaluma were 6'11" like Caden and kind of had that intensity on the boards, right? So he certainly helps that. Has another double-double, his 5th double-double of the year. So yeah, things
real quick. What's Caden Shedrick from? You say health related?
Yeah.
What? Go explain.
Caden is steadfast that he is 100% healthy, right? Whether or not that is true or not, that is kind of up in the air. I will say this, Chip, for a guy who has had injuries throughout his career, I think it's just catching up to him. The back, the shoulder, the hip. Chip, every time Caden Shedrick takes a hard fall, you're like, is he going to get up, right? I think it's that more than anything else, as opposed to necessarily him battling a specific injury this year, where it's just, Chip, you've seen the games. God bless him, but Caden don't really get off the ground, right? When he jumps, right? He gives it what he has, but you and I might have the same vertical as Caden Shedrick at this point in terms of just his ability to get up off the ground. So that's what I'm referring to when I say the injuries there. And Chris Bennett, I will address this. The great Red Panda, Chip, someone who has been much better than Texas basketball throughout her illustrious career, did an excellent job at halftime.
Yeah, she was halftime at Texas OU up in Norman.
Oh, yeah, that's right. Yeah.
So Texas basketball has had the pleasure of Red Panda. If you don't know what we're talking about, there is a gal who gets on a 1,000,000 miles high unicycle and flips bowls from her feet to her head. And that's all I can say.
Yeah.
YouTube it. It is pretty phenomenal because she's not a spring chicken, Red Panda. Eric, am I crazy? I saw a glimpse of Nick Cody a couple games ago, and I was like, I like what I see. What is he just I don't know. He shoots a great percentage. I don't know. He's a big guy. Is he more athletic than Caden Shedrick? I mean, I don't know.
Is he more athletic? No doubt at this point in his career. Is it one of those things where you think RT just wants to go with the veterans? I think that's it. Is it also a situation where Chip, let's just call a spade, right? Rick Barnes said, Chaz Lanier, I need you to shoot the ball because this is what you're getting paid to do. Is it a situation where just the salary just don't line up and it makes sense to put the higher priced guy out there? I think that would be accurate as well.
Because I look at Nick Cody shooting 80%. I look at Jamie Vincent shooting 81%. I'm like, can I get a little more, just a glimpse of what these guys can do? But Eric, your thoughts on Tremont Mark, because he's not shooting it great, but he's part of the veteran core that this team needs. They need him on the floor, don't they?
They do, if for nothing else, perimeter defense. One of the things that Tremont Mark, let's put in two categories. Offensively, I think there's been an adjustment for him and Jordan Pope specifically, right? Because Arthur Kaluma was never a primary number one scoring option in his career with Creighton and Kansas State, right? The other two guys in Jordan Pope and Tremont Mark, especially Mark with Arkansas last year, he was the primary guy. It was, hey, what the offense is to Trey Johnson this year, that's what it was for Tremont Mark last year at Arkansas. Give him the ball. Eric Musselman, give him the ball, let him do his thing. So I think offensively, there's still an adjustment. He's still a guy who kind of is camped out, kind of around the 3-point, kind of being a wing, camped out around the 3-point line, maybe waiting for that shot, catch and shoot, as opposed to a Jordan Pope, who I think is a little bit better off the bounce in terms of getting his shot up. But yeah, I think defensively, that's where it matters, especially, Chip, with Kendall Weaver out, right? Especially with Kendall Weaver out for who knows how long, to be able to guard the perimeter and guard really talented guards in the SEC, they're going to need him, no doubt. And I will segue into one more thing, Chip, because you talked about a guy still finding a shot. With Tremont Mark, I think it's like I said, it's getting acclimated to the offense. But Trey Johnson, we talked about this in the pre-show, second half struggles. Go check it out, 4 downs. In each of Texas's SEC games, Trey Johnson has had at least a 6-minute or more stretch where he either doesn't get a shot off or he's not hitting his shots, right? And sometimes that happens. Rodney Terry emphasizes it in the post game, hey, sometimes your shots don't fall. Don't let it affect your defense. Things that you've heard Rodney Terry say for 3 years now. You probably heard Rick Barnes say them prior, right? But it is something that I think when you are the primary scorer on this team, Chip, I would push back on RT in this sense, right? If that is your leading scorer, and Trey Johnson was averaging north of 18 points coming into the game, yes, you have enough guys in Jordan Pope and others who have scored in their career. But if that's the guy who is your primary scorer, it can't be this way for much longer, in my opinion. So it's something to keep an eye on. He had to stretch, is gone as long as 17, nearly 18 minutes without finding a bucket. Getting some shots at the free throw line, getting, to the free throw line a little bit, but still not enough to offset that long of a stretch without hitting shots, Chip.
Yeah, last night he's 3 of 15, ended up with 12 points, 1 of 8 from 3. He hit that 3-pointer in the first half. In the second half, he was 2 of 9 and 0 for 4 from 3. He did hit a shot late to help cushion Texas's final margin to 61-53. Do you think it's a point where he's hurting the team with his shot selection, Eric? Or was he just having a bad night?
Listen, as a shooter, I think he's just having a bad night because there were some good looks, right? Those were not, he wasn't necessarily forcing some of those shots, right? But again, two things can be true. You would like to see Trey put the ball on the floor a little bit and maybe just drive hard to the hole. Some of the times that he ends up on the free throw lines because he gets fouled on a jump shot, right? Or, in the double bonus. You'd like to see Trey find a little bit more of that attack the basket, especially because, at 6'6", he's going to have some size advantages. But I think some of that is kind of related to the offensive rhythm, the offensive flow, because I guess, Chip, you'd like to see at time maybe Trey. Remember how Dylan DeSue last year, and granted, different positions, but Dylan, you find him on the block. All right, back down a smaller guy, get us a bucket. You'd like to see Trey maybe just get a little action in the post. But to answer your question, I think he's getting good looks. The shots just aren't falling, as will happen for a shooter. But also, I think he's got to find a way to attack the basket a little more.
Yeah. I mean, it happens. We mentioned Maddie Booker going 3 of 19 against South Carolina, and she had a lot of good looks. It just wasn't happening. Sometimes it happens. But as Eric said, we're not going to bury the lead. Texas beat Missouri. That means they've won 2 of their last 3. Now, the loss to Florida, Eric, that was a straight beatdown. Your thoughts on what happened there? Florida, Texas goes to Florida, loses by 24.
I'll sum it up pretty succinctly. Walter Clayton, Elijah Martin, 2 of the top guards in the SEC, played like top guards in the SEC. Texas's guards, Texas really as a team couldn't find buckets, but Texas's guards weren't hitting shots. Caden Shedrick, again, like I said, don't want to pick on Caden. If you're going to have the games where you're not necessarily getting scoring from him, you need boards. You need a type of that physical presence inside. Texas was out physical, no doubt there. With I'm forgetting Alex Mondin, if memory serves me correct, for Florida, the forward.
Alex Condon.
Condon. I said Mondin because Condon. A very good forward in the SEC.
Right.
That's what happened, right? And here's the thing that, listen, Missouri, it's a good win, right? Their team did not hit shots. Missouri came to the game, like I said, ranked 2nd in conference playing 3-point shooting. They missed a ton of shots. But with that being said, they're going to face teams like Florida. Next time we do this podcast, they're going to face Texas A&M on Saturday. We'll see what Wade Taylor's availability is, but they're going to face physical teams that they can't have situationship where you're outscored 3-1 points in the paint like they were in the first A&M meeting, right? So to kind of merge all of that, was my opinion what happened against Florida, and to spin it forward, what they're going to need against A&M.
Okay. All right. Anything else? Texas basketball related. I did find it interesting. Rodney Terry was asked last night after the Missouri game on SEC Network, what is the identity of your team? And Rodney Terry said, we just got to get back to guarding hard. And he said, I felt like we really guarded hard against Missouri. What do you think, Eric? Was that really good defense or just really bad offense coming together last night?
In the first half, I think it just was bad shooting. In the second half, I will give Texas credit, especially down the stretch, those last 10 minutes. You did see a different level of intensity. Quite frankly, this is where I will give RT and Texas credit. Missouri looked like they were getting frustrated by the shots not falling, especially in the second half. Texas didn't outwardly look like they were getting frustrated by the shots falling, in the sense that it didn't affect, to quote the RT, is saying it didn't affect their defense, right? So in that sense, in the second half, I think that was good defense. First half, that was just both teams couldn't buy a bucket.
Well, in this game Saturday against Texas A&M, after losing to A&M in College Station, Texas needs this one. Got to defend your home floor in the SEC, and you got to pull off a couple of I don't want to say upsets, but you got to win against ranked teams on your home floor. You got to boost the resume. Right, Eric?
Agreed. No doubt about it. Listen, especially for Texas, who didn't get a quad 1 victory or quad 2 victory in non-conference play. So yeah, they need it. All
right. You ready for some take it or leave it, Eric?
I am ready, Chip Brown.
All right. Well, let's get to it. Who's serving first?
You are serving to me first, and I'll just quickly address the one question that could have been scored last week. Ohio State beats Notre Dame by at least 8.5 points to win the national championship. I left it because I chose Notre Dame, so I was wrong. Chip Brown took it. They didn't win by 8.5. No, yes, they did. Yes, they did. I'm sorry. Yes, they did.
They covered.
I completely blanked out on that score. They covered. You are
34-23.
I forgot the field goal. So Chip Brown is correct there. So first, take it or leave it. As I send it to you, Chip. Cam Williams is not ready for the NFL. Take it or leave it.
No, I'm going to take this. He's not ready. He's really good in the run. He needs to play guard, honestly, Eric. He needs to play guard in the NFL, and he'll be a better guard. Because what is the one thing that Cam Williams struggles with? Speed rushers.
Yeah.
Guess what the NFL is littered with? Speed rushers. He's going to get somebody killed if he's playing tackle. So just like we saw Sam Cosmi, just like we saw Connor Williams, Connor Williams, played some center. You're out at tackle. They check and see, can you slow down Grenard, Aiden Hutchinson, whoever the sack leaders are, Max Crosby? No? Okay, you're a guard. So Cam Williams is going to end up being a guard. I hope he gets tackle money in the draft, but he's going to end up being a guard, Eric. So I'm going to take this. How about you?
Chip, I am going to leave it. Here is why, right? This question in my mind is open for interpretation. Ready for the NFL? You can say 50-50, right, in terms of the play you saw. I tell you this much, 6'5", 335 with his intangibles and measurables don't grow on trees, and that means it's time to go. That's what that means, right? And Chip, I don't think I'm speaking out of term here. You correct me if I'm wrong. I'm not saying Cam Williams, I'm not trying to, cast any aspersions on him, but let's just say Cam Williams didn't come here to play school. All right.
Right. He was done with school. He not a fan.
So in that sense, yeah, he was ready for the NFL. I'm not necessarily as married to the idea that he has to play guard in the NFL. I think if he can get with a really good offensive line coach and kind of refine some of those things, given his measurables and intangibles, that he can get that right. Because he's not just a big, plodding guy who can't move. He can move. But to your point, yeah, you got to be more consistent against some of those edge rushers who will just run right past you. So I do think he's ready just based on all the circumstances.
Yeah. Yeah. No, he'll find his way. It would be nice to see him with a little more confidence. And our lasting image of Cam Williams was Jack Sawyer going right around him to get a strip sack of Quinn Ewers and an 82-yard fumble return for a touchdown. Like, everyone's going to blame Quinn Ewers. Cam Williams needed to do something on that play, needed to get Jack Sawyer off of his warpath ever so slightly to give Quinn Ewers a chance on that play. All right. Take it or leave it. Number 2.
Chip, this is you.
The position group you feel most confident in right now, Eric, is the running back room. Take it or leave it.
I was torn on this because I am really high on Arch Manning. I feel really confident that I think, especially as I noted earlier in the show, the 2.5 games worth of experience, I think that's huge for a guy who's going to be a first-time starter. And I mean, listen, got an SEC start, right? I think that's huge. It's not just coming in, kind of cold. But by default, you have to be most confident in the running back room. You bring him back Quintravion Wisner. You got Jarrett Gibson. I'm really high on CJ Baxter. Again, call out my Florida bias. Maybe it's the Orlando bias there. Edgewater High, I've seen him for a while. I think as long as he can return, be 100% both physically and mentally, Chip, I think he's going to be fine come 2025. So, yeah, I will take it.
I'll tell you one quick thing about Arch Manning. And I did a little bit of a deep dive in a story, 10 things to be excited about Arch Manning. Get over to Horns247. I believe it's a free story now. That one SEC start he had against Mississippi State, 7 of 8 on third down, including 3rd and 9 touchdown passes, 3rd and 9 touchdown passes of 49 yards to DeAndre Moore, 27 yards to DeAndre Moore in that Mississippi State game. So something you like to see, a guy who delivers on third down. All right. As far as the position group, I feel most confident in right now. I'm gonna leave this and I'm gonna say the edge rushers. I really like what Texas has coming back. You lose Barron Sorrell. Don't get me wrong. Barron Sorrell was an awesome culture warrior, playmaker, steady quarterback pressurer. But I like Ethan Burke stepping in for Barron Sorrell. And then you've got Colton Vasek backing up Ethan Burke on that strong side. And then you've got Colin Simmons and Trey Moore. So with guys, filling in behind them, I really like that room, and that room's going to need to be really good next year. Obviously, Texas has already leaned heavily on the portal for the defensive tackle position. Right now, your two starters would probably be Travis Shaw and Cole Brevard. Two transfers would be your two starting defensive tackles, and we'll see how all the young defensive tackles who are all early enrollees, Justice Terry, Myron Charles from your state of Florida, and Josiah Sharma, who's SEC big, 6'4", 348. We'll see how those guys do in the spring, and that probably will tell us how much, if at all, Texas needs to get in the portal for another defensive tackle, which it kind of feels like. All right, Eric, take it or leave it, number 3.
All right, Chip. You feel better about the offense going into 2025 than the defense right now. Take it or leave it.
Ooh, it's a good one. You know what? I'm gonna leave that for the moment. I'm gonna wait to get more clarity on that in the spring. I really like what Texas has coming back on defense. Obviously, those defensive tackles need to pan out, the transfers. Love Anthony Hill. Leonga Lafau's getting better. Anthony Smith. Now you bring in Brad Spence from Arkansas. The safety position is loaded, even though you lose Andrew Makuba, who I think is going to be a great pro. You have Michael Taff, Derek Williams, Jelani McDonald, JJR, Jonah Williams, who Hank South of Horns247 wrote a story about how he's juggling football and baseball. You need to go check out at Horns247. I think Manny Muhammad's going to be A-okay, and I'm really excited about this Cade Phillips, freshman corner who's got this wingspan that's like Ethan Burke-like for a 6-foot corner. I can't wait to see this guy with his stretch arms, Eric. So I'm gonna leave this for the moment. Can you believe that? I'm sure you're gonna take it because you're a sexy offense guy, but I'm gonna leave it, Eric.
I don't know who told you I was gonna take this, because how about this? I'll make it quick. Is Anthony Hill returning? Is Colin Simmons returning? Is Michael Taft returning? The answer is yes. I'm going to take those 3 building blocks, starting pieces, and go from there. That's no shade on the offense, right? But I think there's going to, it's going to take a little time. Ryan Wingo, DeAndre Moore, some of the changes in the offensive line, tight end, et cetera, et cetera. You're telling me I have 3 guys who are arguably going to be in the running for preseason All-Americans? Yeah, I'm starting there, Chip.
Yeah. Lots to learn in the spring. It's going to be fun because guys emerged. Gunnar Helm, I don't think any of us had him as the single season record holder for catches and receiving yards at this time last year. So, all right, good stuff. Thanks, everybody. Thanks for tuning in to this episode of the Flagship Podcast. Please tell your friends and enemies to do the same thing, and tell them all to like and subscribe the Horns247 YouTube channel so that we can grow. Don't you want to grow? We want to grow in 2025. Everybody wants to grow. Awesome. Well, listen, for Eric Henry, I'm Chip Brown. Until next time, we'll see you over at Horns247.com, where you need to become an annual member because it's really cheap and you get lots of really good intel. You get to hang out with me and Eric, and you get VIP access to all the team sites in the preeminent 24/7 sports network. So until next time, stay safe and keep the faith.